The security footage doesn't lie. At 11:47 p.m. on March 15, 2025, 7-year-old Yusuf al-Mansouri walked toward the mihrab of Al-Hussein Mosque in Cairo. His small white thobe glowed under the mosque's lights. His bare feet made no sound on the ancient marble. At 11:48 p.m. he was gone. Not hidden, not kidnapped. Gone, as if the air itself had swallowed him whole. But here's what made every scholar in Egypt argue for months. When Yusuf was found 72 hours later, curled behind the same mihrab, sleeping peacefully, his tiny hands clutched something impossible: golden sand. Not Egyptian sand, not sand from any desert on earth, sand that glowed softly in the darkness, sand that felt warm even in the cold night, sand that smelled of flowers no botanist could identify. "Where were you, Habibi?" his mother sobbed, holding him so tight she feared breaking him. Yusuf looked at her with eyes that seemed ancient, eyes that had seen things no child should see. "Mama," he whispered, his voice strange and distant, "I walked through the wall of light, and on the other side there was another mosque, a mosque with no end. Why would a child vanish inside one of Islam's holiest sites? What exists behind this wall of light? And most terrifying, what if the sand proves there are doorways in our world that were never meant to be opened? This story will challenge everything you believe about what's real and what lies beyond. Listen until the end, because what happened to Yusuf isn't just his story, it might be a warning for all of us. Before we continue with this extraordinary account, please check if you're subscribed to this channel and leave a comment telling us which country you're watching from. Your engagement helps us share these important stories with more people around the world. Now let me take you back to the beginning. The al-Mansouri family lived in the historic district of Cairo, just 3 blocks from Al-Hussein Mosque. Ahmed al-Mansouri worked as a calligrapher, copying Quranic verses in the ancient style his grandfather had taught him. His wife, Layla, taught Islamic studies at a girls' school. They were not wealthy, but they were rich in faith. Yusuf was their only child, born after 8 years of desperate prayer and countless tears shed in tahajjud. From the moment he could speak, he showed an unusual sensitivity to spiritual matters. At age 4, he would wake his parents at Fajr time, even before the adhan, saying, "The angels are calling, Baba, don't you hear them?" At 5, he memorized Surah Al-Kahf without formal lessons, simply from hearing his father recite it every Friday. By 6, he began seeing things others couldn't. "Mama, why is that man standing in the corner?" he'd ask, pointing at empty spaces. "Why doesn't he join us for dinner?" Layla would recite Ayat al-Kursi and tell herself it was just a child's imagination. Ahmed would remind her that children are closer to the unseen world, their hearts not yet clouded by materialism and doubt. But on the evening of March 15th, something changed. Yusuf had been unusually quiet all day. At Maghrib, he refused to eat, staring instead at the direction of Al-Hussein Mosque, visible from their window. "Yusuf, Habibi, what's wrong?" Layla asked, touching his forehead for fever. "They're calling me, Mama," he said simply. "The voices from the green light. They say I have to come tonight." Ahmed and Layla exchanged worried glances. "What voices, son?" "From inside the mosque," Yusuf replied, his eyes distant and unfocused. "They say there's something I need to see. Something important. They say I was chosen." That's when everything spiraled beyond their understanding. Against every parental instinct, Ahmed decided to take Yusuf to the mosque that night. "If my son says he's being called, I won't ignore it," he told Layla. "The mosque is safe. It's Allah's house. What harm could come there?" Layla insisted on coming too. They dressed Yusuf in his white thobe, the one he wore on Fridays, and walked through Cairo's narrow streets under a moonless sky. Al-Hussein Mosque stood as it had for centuries, its minarets piercing the darkness like fingers pointing toward heaven. The building held the head of Hussein ibn Ali, the Prophet's grandson, martyred at Karbala. It was a place of immense barakah, where millions came to seek blessings and spiritual connection. The night guard, an elderly man named Sheikh Mahmoud, recognized the family. "Late for a visit, Syed Ahmed," he noted, concern in his weathered voice. "My son, he says he was called," Ahmed explained, feeling foolish saying it aloud. Sheikh Mahmoud's expression changed. He studied Yusuf carefully, then nodded slowly. "The chosen ones sometimes hear the call. I've been guarding this mosque for 40 years. I've seen things. Go, but be cautious. Don't let him go anywhere alone, and if anything feels wrong, even slightly wrong, leave immediately." They entered the mosque's vast prayer hall. At this hour it was nearly empty, except for a few elderly men performing night prayers in distant corners. The Ottoman lanterns cast dancing shadows on the walls. The smell of incense and rose water filled the air. Yusuf walked ahead with purpose, his small feet moving steadily across the marble floor. He wasn't wandering, he was going somewhere specific. "Yusuf, wait," Layla called, quickening her pace, but her son seemed not to hear. He walked directly toward the mihrab, that sacred niche indicating the direction of Makkah, where the imam stood during prayers. Ahmed grabbed his phone, checking the time. 11:45 p.m. Yusuf stopped 5 meters from the mihrab. He stood perfectly still, staring at the ornate calligraphy covering the walls. His lips moved silently, as if reading words only he could see. "Yusuf?" Ahmed approached him carefully. "What do you see?" "The door, Baba," Yusuf whispered, his voice strange, layered, as if multiple people spoke through him. "The door is opening. Can't you see the light?" Ahmed and Layla saw nothing but the familiar mosque walls, beautiful with their geometric patterns and Quranic verses inlaid in gold. Then, at exactly 11:47 p.m., Yusuf took 3 steps forward and vanished. Not gradually, not walking away. He simply ceased to exist, as if the very fabric of reality had opened and swallowed him whole. Layla's scream echoed through the mosque, shattering the sacred silence. Chaos erupted in Al-Hussein Mosque. Sheikh Mahmoud came running. The elderly worshippers abandoned their prayers. Ahmed dropped to his knees, frantically feeling the floor where his son had stood moments before, as if Yusuf might have fallen through some hidden trapdoor. "He was right here," Ahmed shouted, his voice breaking. "He took 3 steps and he just disappeared." "That's impossible," Sheikh Mahmoud said, but his face was pale. In 40 years, he had heard stories, old stories, whispered stories, but he had never witnessed. "Check the security footage," Layla demanded, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold her phone. "The cameras, they'll show what happened." The mosque's security office was a small room filled with monitors, showing different angles of the prayer halls. The head of security, a young man named Karim, rewound the footage to 11:45 p.m. They watched in silence as the recording showed Yusuf walking toward the mihrab, his parents following. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. Yusuf took 3 steps forward, and on camera, clear as day, the child simply blinked out of existence. One frame, Yusuf standing there. Next frame, empty space. This must be a technical glitch," Karim stammered, rewinding and playing it again. Same result. "The camera must have malfunctioned. Check the other angles," Sheikh Mahmoud ordered, his voice grim. 3 different cameras, 3 different angles. All showed the same impossible thing, a 7-year-old boy disappearing into thin air inside one of Islam's most sacred spaces. Within an hour, the mosque was swarming with police. Within 2 hours, it was a national news story. Within 3 hours, the Egyptian government had sealed off the entire block. Investigators searched every millimeter of the mosque, thermal cameras, K9 units, ground-penetrating radar. They found ancient chambers beneath the mosque, storage rooms, old tombs, maintenance tunnels, but no 7-year-old boy. By dawn, Egypt's Minister of Interior stood before cameras and said, "We are investigating all possibilities." But his eyes betrayed him. He had no answers. The ulama, Islamic scholars, arrived en masse. Sheikh Al-Tayyib from Al-Azhar University, Sheikh Hassan from the Islamic Research Academy, Sheikh Fatima, a renowned expert in Islamic mysticism. They gathered in the mosque's library, examining old manuscripts, searching for precedents. "The Quran speaks of unseen realms," Sheikh Fatima said quietly, holding an ancient text. "Surah al-Jinn, Surah al-Kahf, with the story of Dhul Qarnayn and the barrier between worlds. The Prophet's Isra and Mi'raj, his night journey through dimensions of reality beyond our comprehension." "Are you suggesting—" Sheikh Hassan couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm suggesting," Sheikh Fatima replied, "that perhaps the boundaries between worlds are thinner in places of intense spiritual energy. And few places hold more spiritual weight than this mosque, where the blessed head of the Prophet's grandson rests." Ahmed and Layla sat in the mosque's courtyard, wrapped in blankets despite the warm Cairo night, holding each other and reciting every prayer they knew. Parents from across Cairo arrived to pray with them. Vigils were held, thousands gathered, making dua for Yusuf's return. But as night fell again, 24 hours since his disappearance, there was still no sign of the boy. And then, on the second night, something strange happened. At exactly 11:47 p.m. on the second night, precisely 24 hours after Yusuf vanished, every electronic device in Al-Hussein Mosque malfunctioned simultaneously. Security cameras, static, lights, flickering wildly, phones, dead. And in that darkness, those present reported seeing a faint green luminescence emanating from the mihrab. Not bright, just a soft glow, like phosphorescence on water. When the power returned 3 minutes later, investigators found something that made no sense. Fresh rose petals scattered in a perfect circle around the spot where Yusuf had disappeared. Not dried petals, fresh ones, still damp with morning dew, in a mosque sealed by police, with armed guards at every entrance. "Someone is playing a cruel joke," the chief investigator declared, but his hands trembled as he bagged the petals as evidence. On the third day, more anomalies emerged. At dawn, the muaddin who climbed the minaret to give the Fajr call reported seeing a child standing on the mosque's dome, an architectural impossibility, as the dome's exterior was smooth metal with no handholds. By the time he radioed security, the figure was gone. That afternoon, worshippers reported hearing a child's voice reciting Quran from inside the walls, not from speakers, from within the structure itself. The voice recited Surah Al-Kahf, verse 16, "And when you have withdrawn from them and that which they worship other than Allah, retreat to the cave. Your Lord will spread out for you of His mercy and will prepare for you from your affair facility." The cave. The verse about withdrawing to the cave. Sheikh Fatima's eyes widened. The cave chapter. The dimension between worlds. He's trying to communicate. But the most disturbing incident occurred on the third night. Layla had refused to leave the mosque. She sat in prayer position near the mihrab, her hands raised, tears streaming constantly, making dua after dua. Ahmed dozed fitfully beside her, exhausted from 3 days without sleep. At 3:33 a.m., the deepest part of night when the veil between worlds is thinnest, Layla felt someone touch her shoulder. She turned. A young boy stood there, not Yusuf. This child was perhaps 10 years old, with unusual features, too perfect, too symmetrical, with eyes that reflected light like a cat's. "Your son is safe," the strange boy said in classical Arabic, the ancient dialect of the Quran. "He walks in al-Barzakh, the space between. He was chosen as a witness. He will return when the appointed time comes." "Who are you?" Layla whispered, afraid to breathe too loudly lest this apparition disappear. "I am one of the guardians. The mosque has many guardians you cannot see. Your son stumbled through a door that opens only once in 100 years. He will emerge, but he will be changed. Prepare your heart." "Please," Layla reached out. "Please, bring him back now." Her hand passed through the boy's shoulder as if he were smoke. The apparition smiled sadly. "He is learning what he needs to learn. Trust in Allah's plan. The answer lies in the sand." And he dissolved into the air, leaving behind only the faint scent of amber and roses. When Layla screamed for Ahmed, for the guards, for anyone, and told them what she'd seen, most dismissed it as hallucination from grief and exhaustion. But Sheikh Fatima listened carefully. "The answer lies in the sand," she repeated. What sand? What could that mean? None of them knew. Not yet. By the fourth day, the case had attracted international attention. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, all covering the miracle mystery or the mosque disappearance. Some called it a hoax. Others called it proof of parallel dimensions. Religious scholars debated. Scientists proposed theories ranging from quantum tunneling to mass hallucination. But in Cairo, Sheikh Fatima convened a secret meeting of the ulama who specialized in Islamic mysticism, the scholars who studied the aspects of faith most people preferred to ignore. They met in Al-Azhar University's restricted archives, surrounded by manuscripts some over 1,000 years old. "There are precedents," Sheikh Fatima announced, spreading ancient texts across the table. "Not many, not well documented, but they exist." She read from a 9th century manuscript. In the year 847, during the reign of Al-Wathiq, a young scholar disappeared while praying in the mosque of Al-Mutawakkil in Samarra. He returned 7 days later, speaking of gardens and rivers unlike any on earth, and palaces of light where angels taught him hidden knowledge. Another text, from 12th century Andalusia, the Sufi master Ibn Arabi recorded a case of a child who vanished during Dhikr and returned claiming to have walked through 70,000 veils of light, each one revealing a different aspect of divine beauty. These accounts, Sheikh Hassan objected, are they authentic, or are they mystical poetry, metaphor? That is always the question, Sheikh Fatima replied. But consider, the Quran itself speaks of the Prophet's night journey, Isra and Miraj, physical body or spiritual, metaphorical or literal. The greatest scholars have debated this for 14 centuries. What we know is that it happened. The how remains a mystery. Sheikh Al-Tayyib, the eldest among them, spoke for the first time. In Surah Al-Kahf we read about the people of the cave, young believers who slept for 309 years. Time moved differently for them. When they woke, they thought only a day had passed. The Quran teaches us that time and space, what we perceive as reality, is not absolute. Allah can fold it, stretch it, transcend it entirely. So you're saying Yusuf might be experiencing time differently? Ahmed asked. He had been allowed into this meeting, this council of scholars, because he was the father. He had a right to know. I'm saying, Sheikh Al-Tayyib replied gently, that your son may be in a place where our physical laws don't apply. He may be gone for 3 days by our clock, but for him, it could be 3 hours, or 3 years. We simply don't know. Layla covered her face with her hands, sobbing. But the message from the Guardian, Sheikh Fatima continued. The answer lies in the sand. What sand? There's no sand in the mosque. The floors are marble. The courtyard is tile. Where would sand come from? They didn't have to wait long for that answer. On the afternoon of the 4th day, maintenance workers cleaning the area around the mihrab, which had been cordoned off as a crime scene, found something impossible. Between the marble tiles in the grout lines, tiny grains of sand had appeared. Not Sahara sand, not construction sand, golden sand that shimmered with an inner light. The workers brought it to Sheikh Fatima immediately. She took the grains in her hand and gasped. It's warm, she whispered, and it smells I can't describe it, like jasmine and amber and something else, something not of this world. They sent samples to laboratories. Geologists examined it. The results baffled everyone. The sand's mineral composition matched no known desert on Earth. It contained trace elements that shouldn't exist together, gold, titanium, and something unidentifiable that made spectroscopy machines produce impossible readings. This sand is literally from somewhere else, the lead geologist reported. I don't know where, but not from Earth, or at least not from Earth as we know it. And that's when they knew Yusuf really had gone somewhere real, somewhere beyond their understanding. The question now was, would he find his way back? At exactly 11:47 p.m. on the 72nd hour, 3 days to the minute after his disappearance, the mosque's emergency alarms suddenly blared. Security rushed to the mihrab, where motion sensors had triggered, and there, curled in the fetal position on the cold marble floor, was Yusuf al-Mansuri, alive, breathing, unharmed. Yusuf! Layla's scream could be heard across half of Cairo. She ran faster than she'd ever run, throwing herself down beside her son, gathering him into her arms, sobbing his name over and over. Ahmed was right behind her, his hands trembling as he touched his son's face, his hair, his hands, confirming he was real, solid, truly there. Yusuf's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he seemed confused, as if waking from a deep sleep. Then recognition flooded his face. Mama, Baba? We're here, Habibi, we're here. Layla pressed her lips to his forehead, her tears soaking his white thobe. Don't cry, Mama, Yusuf said softly. His voice was still a child's voice, but there was something different about it, something older, something that had seen things beyond words. I'm okay, I'm safe. I was always safe. Medical teams rushed in, checking his vitals. Miraculously, incredibly, impossibly, Yusuf was in perfect health. No dehydration despite 3 days without water. No malnutrition despite no food. His body temperature was normal. His heart rate was steady. It was as if no time had passed for him at all. But his hands, his small 7-year-old hands, were clenched tightly shut, holding something. Yusuf, Habibi, what are you holding? Ahmed asked gently. Slowly, like someone reluctant to let go of a precious treasure, Yusuf opened his hands. Sand, golden sand that glowed softly in the dim light. Sand that felt warm despite the cool night. Sand that smelled of flowers no one could name. The same sand that had been appearing around the mosque. But now, here it was. Handfuls of it, impossible and real, brought back from wherever Yusuf had been. Sheikh Fatima approached carefully, her eyes wide with wonder and something like fear. Yusuf, can you tell us where you went? What happened to you? The child looked at her with those ancient eyes, eyes that had seen beyond the veil, and said simply, I walked through the wall of light, and I went to the other side. They took Yusuf to a private room in the mosque where he could rest and be examined by doctors while his parents stayed close. Media swarmed outside, but police kept them at bay. This moment was too sacred, too profound to be turned into a spectacle. When Yusuf had rested and eaten, he consumed dates and water with the hunger of someone who truly hadn't eaten in days. Despite his body showing no signs of starvation, Sheikh Fatima, Sheikh Al-Tayyib, and a handful of trusted scholars gathered to hear his account. Ahmed and Layla sat on either side of their son, holding his hands, unwilling to let him go even for a moment. "Tell us, Yusuf," Sheikh Fatima said gently. "What happened when you walked toward the mihrab?" Yusuf took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his words came out measured, careful, as if trying to translate something beyond language into human speech. "I was standing there, and I saw the light. Not from the mosque lights. A different light, green and gold swirling like water right there in the wall. And I heard voices, beautiful voices, singing words I didn't understand, but that made my heart feel warm." "Were you afraid?" Sheikh Al-Tayyib asked. "No," Yusuf replied. "I should have been, but I wasn't. The voices said, 'Come, you are chosen. Come and see what few are permitted to see.' So I walked forward and then I was somewhere else." "Where, child? What did you see?" Yusuf closed his eyes, remembering. "A mosque, but not like this mosque. Bigger, so big I couldn't see the walls. The ceiling was the sky, but not our sky. This sky had colors that don't exist here. Purple and gold and silver all swirling together, and there were people, so many people, but they weren't like us." "What do you mean?" Layla asked, her voice barely a whisper. "They were made of light," Yusuf explained. "I could see through them a little bit, and they wore clothes from different times. Some looked like they were from long ago, like in Baba's history books. Some looked like they were from the future. All of them were praying. So many people all praying together, and their prayers made sounds like music." The scholars exchanged glances. This matched descriptions from mystical literature, accounts of the Malakut, the unseen realm where angels and righteous souls gather for worship. "Did anyone speak to you?" Sheikh Fatima asked. "Yes," Yusuf nodded. "An old man. He wore a green turban and had a long white beard. He smiled at me and said, 'Welcome, little one. You have been brought here to witness and to remember. What you see here you must carry back with you. You must tell them what you've learned.'" "Who was he?" Ahmed asked. "I don't know, Baba, but he felt important, like he was someone very great. He took my hand and walked with me through the mosque, and he showed me things." "What things?" Yusuf's expression grew serious, too serious for a 7-year-old. "He showed me how thin the walls are between worlds. He said most people think reality is solid, fixed, but it's not. It's like a curtain, and there are many rooms behind many curtains. This world, our world, is just one room. The angel's world is another room. Jannah is another room, and there are rooms in between that have no names in human language." The child pulled out a handful of the golden sand from his pocket. "He told me to take this," he said. "When you return, they won't believe you. They'll think you dreamed it, or that you're sick, or that it was all in your mind. This sand is proof. It comes from a place between places. It cannot exist in your world according to your world's rules, but here it is, impossible and real." "Did he tell you why you were chosen?" Sheikh Al-Tayyib asked, his voice thick with emotion. Yusuf nodded. "He said my heart was still pure, that children can see and go places adults can't, because they haven't closed their hearts yet. He said I was chosen to be a witness, so that people would remember that Allah's creation is bigger than what we can see or touch, that mysteries are real, that the unseen is as true as the seen." "How long were you there?" Layla asked. "It felt like 3 days to us." "I don't know, Mama," Yusuf replied, confused. "It felt like maybe a few hours. We walked, we talked. He showed me so many beautiful things, gardens with rivers flowing underneath, lights that sang, books that wrote themselves with prayers from all the people on earth. And then he said, 'It's time for you to go home now. Your parents are crying for you.' And he walked me back to the green light. And then I was here." Silence fell over the room. Every person present felt the weight of what they'd just heard, a testimony from beyond the veil, spoken through a child's innocent lips. "Yusuf," Sheikh Fatima said finally, "do you understand how important this is, what you've experienced?" The boy looked at her with those 2 old eyes and said, "The old man told me people would want to study me, ask me questions, make me famous. But he said that's not the point. The point isn't me. The point is the message. Allah's creation is vast beyond imagining. And sometimes he opens doors to remind us of that, to keep us humble, to keep us wondering. It was, Sheikh Al-Tayyeb would later say, the wisest thing he'd heard in 50 years of scholarship. The news of Yusuf's return exploded across global media within hours. But unlike most modern miracles that get dissected and dismissed, this one had evidence. The sand. Laboratories across the world requested samples. The analysis results were consistent and baffling. The sand's composition was impossible. It contained isotopes in ratios that couldn't occur naturally on Earth. Its crystalline structure defied classification. When exposed to certain frequencies of light, it emitted a faint glow that lasted for hours, a property no known mineral possessed. It's as if, one physicist admitted on camera, this substance comes from a place where the laws of chemistry and physics are slightly different, which should be impossible. But here it is. The Islamic world was electrified. Millions saw Yusuf's experience as a sign, a reminder of the unseen realities the Quran speaks about. Mosques around the world reported increased attendance. Young people who had drifted from faith began asking questions again, but controversy erupted too. Skeptics called it an elaborate hoax. They claimed the sand could be manufactured, that Yusuf had been hidden somewhere in the mosque's catacombs, that the whole thing was a publicity stunt or mass delusion. The security footage clearly shows the child disappearing, defenders argued. Video can be edited, skeptics countered. But the sand? Scientists can't explain it. Then those scientists are incompetent. Everything has a rational explanation. The debate raged for weeks. Talk shows, podcasts, academic papers, religious gatherings. Everyone had an opinion. The Egyptian government, after much deliberation, declared the area around the mihrab in Al-Hussein Mosque a protected historical site. They installed a glass barrier around the exact spot where Yusuf had vanished and placed some of the golden sand in a sealed container for public viewing. Millions came to see it, to pray there, to hope for their own glimpse beyond the veil. But the family, Ahmed, Layla and Yusuf, faced the hardest test of all, living with the aftermath. People wanted pieces of Yusuf's thobe, strands of his hair. They wanted him to pray for their sick relatives, as if he had become a saint. Film producers offered millions for his story. Publishers wanted book deals. Universities wanted to study him. No, Ahmed said firmly to every request. My son is not a commodity. He's not a miracle worker. He's a child who was granted a gift, a vision, and we will protect him. They moved to a different neighborhood, changed their phone numbers, withdrew from public life as much as possible, but one interview they did grant. Sheikh Fatima, in a private setting, recorded Yusuf's full account for the archives of Al-Azhar University. The recording was sealed with the understanding that it would be preserved for future generations of scholars. In that interview, Yusuf said something that wasn't in his public statements. The old man with the green turban told me one more thing before I left. He said, "This gift comes with a burden. Some will believe you and be strengthened in faith. Some will deny you and harden their hearts. Both reactions are a test for them and for you. Your test is to remain humble and to remember, you didn't earn this experience. It was given to you as mercy, as reminder, as sign. Stay small in your own eyes, and Allah will keep you protected." The wisdom in those words would guide Yusuf through all that came after. 5 years later, the world had moved on to new sensations and scandals. The story of the mosque boy became something people vaguely remembered, a strange incident, an unsolved mystery, a story told on late-night talk shows and mystery podcasts. But for the Al-Mansouri family, nothing would ever be the same. Yusuf, now 12 years old, lived a quiet life. He attended school, played with friends, did homework like any ordinary child. But those who knew him well noticed the difference. He was gentle in a way that seemed beyond his years. He never participated in gossip. He defended the weak. He prayed his 5 prayers without being reminded, and sometimes, late at night, his parents would find him sitting by the window, staring at the stars, a handful of golden sand in his palm. The sand didn't diminish. No matter how much they used for scientific testing or gave to museums, Yusuf's original handful remained the same, as if it existed outside the laws of physics. "What are you thinking about, Habibi?" Layla asked one night, finding him at the window. "The old man told me I would understand more as I grew older," Yusuf replied softly. "I'm starting to understand now." "Understand what?" "Why he showed me those things. Not just to prove the unseen world exists, but to teach me something about this world, about how we treat each other, about how we live." Yusuf turned to face his mother, his young face serious. In that place, that mosque between worlds, everyone prayed together. Rich and poor, old and young, from all times and all places. No one argued about who was more righteous. No one fought over which prayer was more correct. They just prayed. They just loved Allah. They just existed in peace together. And in this world? Layla asked, though she knew the answer. In this world, we fight, we divide. Muslims against Muslims, believers against non-believers. Everyone thinking they have the only truth. But Mama, I saw the truth. The truth is so much bigger than our arguments, so much vaster than our little divisions. Layla hugged her son, tears in her eyes. That's a heavy burden for a 12-year-old to carry. The old man said I would be okay, Yusuf replied. He said when it gets too heavy, I should smell the sand. So I do. And it was true. Whenever Yusuf felt overwhelmed by the weight of what he'd witnessed, he would hold the golden sand close and breathe in its otherworldly fragrance. And peace would flood through him, peace that surpassed understanding. The scientific community never reached a consensus on the sand. Some laboratories insisted it was an unknown mineral from Earth's deep crust. Others maintained it was extraterrestrial. A few honest scientists simply said, "We don't know what this is." But the debates didn't matter to Yusuf. He knew where it came from. He'd been there. Ahmed's calligraphy business flourished. Somehow people found out who he was despite the family's attempts at privacy, and many wanted Quranic verses written by the miracle boy's father. Ahmed donated most of the extra income to orphanages and to the maintenance of Al-Hussein Mosque. Layla wrote a book, not about the incident itself, but about raising children with spiritual awareness in a materialistic age. It became a bestseller in the Muslim world, though she published it under a pseudonym. And the mosque? Al-Hussein Mosque became the most visited Islamic site in Egypt after Mecca and Medina. Millions came to pray at the spot where the impossible had occurred. Many reported feeling an unusual peace there, a presence that calmed their troubled hearts. Sheikh Fatima, before she passed away at age 87, wrote in her final book, "The case of Yusuf al-Mansuri remains the most documented instance of interdimensional travel in Islamic history. Whether you believe it was literal or mystical, physical or spiritual, the message remains the same. We live in a reality far more complex and wondrous than our limited senses can perceive, and sometimes, rarely but beautifully, the veil parts, and a human is allowed to glimpse what lies beyond. Not for their own glory, but as a reminder for all of us. Stay humble, stay open, stay full of wonder." By the time Yusuf turned 17, he had made a decision about his future. Despite offers from every major university in the world, despite scholarship opportunities in physics, theology, and philosophy, he chose to study simple calligraphy with his father. "The old man told me," Yusuf explained to his parents, "that the greatest service I could do would be to live an ordinary, righteous life, not to be a celebrity, not to be a scholar everyone quotes, just to be a good person who reminds others, through quiet example, that there's more to reality than what we see." So he learned to write Quranic verses in beautiful Arabic script. He learned to mix inks from traditional recipes passed down through generations. He learned patience, precision, and humility. But once a year, on the anniversary of his disappearance, Yusuf would give a single lecture at Al-Azhar University. These lectures were never advertised publicly, yet somehow the lecture hall was always full. Young people came, old scholars came, skeptics came, believers came, and Yusuf would speak simply about his experience, adding new details he'd remembered, new insights he'd gained. He never embellished, he never dramatized. He simply testified. "I don't know why I was chosen," he would always begin. "I wasn't particularly pious. I wasn't particularly special. I was just a child who heard a call and responded. And what I learned there, in that place between places, is that Allah's mercy is so vast, His creation so incomprehensibly beautiful, that our human minds can barely hold a fraction of it." He would show the sand, letting people see it, but never touch it. "This is my proof," he'd say. "But it's not just proof of what happened to me. It's proof that we should never be so arrogant as to think we understand everything. Science is beautiful, logic is important, but they're not the whole story. Mystery is real. Wonder is justified. The unknown is not just something we haven't discovered yet. Some of it is beyond human comprehension entirely." His annual lectures became legendary. Students would record them, transcribe them, share them, but Yusuf never sought the attention. The moment the lecture ended, He would return to his quiet life, to his calligraphy, to his small apartment in Cairo where he lived simply. He never married. When asked why, he would smile and say, "The old man told me I had a specific purpose. I'm still fulfilling it. Maybe marriage is part of that future, maybe not. I trust Allah's plan." The golden sand remained. Yusuf kept it in a small wooden box his father had made, lined with silk his mother had embroidered. Occasionally, when someone was dying or seriously ill, he would let them hold the sand. Many reported feeling peace, comfort, a lessening of pain. Some recovered when recovery seemed impossible. "Is the sand healing them?" reporters would ask. "The sand is just sand," Yusuf would reply. "If healing happens, it's Allah's will. The sand is merely a reminder, a physical proof that there's more to existence than we know. That reminder can be powerful. It can give hope. And sometimes hope is the doorway through which healing enters." As Yusuf grew older, the experience never faded. Most childhood memories blur with time, but his memory of the mosque between worlds remained crystal clear. Every detail, every color, every word the old man spoke. "I think that's part of the miracle too," he told his aging parents one evening as they sat together, "that I wasn't allowed to forget, because if I forgot, I might start doubting. I might start thinking it was just a dream, but I remember everything, and that memory keeps me grounded, keeps me humble, keeps me faithful." Ahmed, now in his 60s, smiled at his son. "You've lived up to everything that was asked of you, Yusuf. Your mother and I are so proud." "I only did what anyone should do," Yusuf replied. "I witnessed something extraordinary, and I testified to it. That's all. The rest of my life has been ordinary, beautifully, blessedly ordinary." But it wasn't truly ordinary, because Yusuf al-Mansuri lived each day knowing, not believing, not hoping, but knowing, that death was not the end, that the veil between worlds was thin, that loved ones who had passed were not gone, but transformed, that every prayer was heard, that every tear was witnessed, that nothing, absolutely nothing, was meaningless in Allah's vast design. And that knowledge, that certainty, transformed everything about how he lived. Today, Yusuf al-Mansuri is 37 years old. He still lives in Cairo, still practices calligraphy, still gives his annual lecture. The golden sand, impossibly, remains, unchanged by time, unexplained by science, a quiet testimony to mysteries beyond human comprehension. The debate about what happened continues. Skeptics have their theories, believers have theirs, but Yusuf doesn't engage in those debates anymore. "I lived it," he says simply. "I don't need to convince anyone. I don't need to prove anything beyond what I've already offered. Those who are ready to accept it will accept it. Those who aren't, won't. And that's okay. Everyone is on their own journey. But there's one thing Yusuf wants every person to know, something the old man told him in that final moment before he returned. The door I walked through appears once every 100 years in that mosque. But similar doors, different doors, exist everywhere. Not physical doors, spiritual doors. Moments when the veil thins and Allah allows a glimpse beyond. A powerful prayer answered in an impossible way. A dream that proves prophetic. A moment of inexplicable peace in the midst of chaos. A coincidence too perfect to be mere chance. These are all doors, little openings, reminders. The question is, are we paying attention, or are we so absorbed in the material world, in our phones, our jobs, our endless distractions, that we miss these whispers from beyond? Do we recognize them when they happen, or do we dismiss them, rationalize them, forget them? So here's what I ask of you, dear listener. Pay attention to the mysteries in your own life. When something happens that can't be easily explained, don't rush to dismiss it. Sit with it, consider it. Maybe it's nothing, but maybe, just maybe, it's a door opening, a reminder from Allah that you are not alone, that this world is not all there is, that meaning and purpose are real. Stay humble enough to admit that you don't understand everything. Stay open enough to accept that reality might be far stranger and more beautiful than you've been taught. And if you ever find yourself doubting faith, doubting meaning, doubting whether any of this matters, remember the golden sand. Remember the child who walked through a wall of light and returned to tell us it's all real. The unseen is as true as the seen. Mystery is not the enemy of faith, it's the doorway to it. Before you go, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment telling us, have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? Something that made you wonder if there's more to reality than what we can see? Your story matters. Your experience matters. Because every testimony, every witness, every person who says, "I saw something impossible," they're all threads in a tapestry showing us that Allah's creation is vast, mysterious, and more wonderful than we can possibly imagine. The sand from nowhere is still there in Cairo in Yusuf's keeping. If you ever visit Egypt, if you ever pray at Al-Hussein Mosque, know that you're standing on thin ground where the barrier between worlds once parted, where a child disappeared and returned changed, where the impossible became undeniable, and who knows, maybe the door will open again, maybe not in 100 years, maybe tomorrow, maybe for you. Stay ready, stay open, stay faithful. Because as Yusuf al-Mansuri learned at age 7 and has spent 30 years teaching others, the walls between worlds are thinner than we think, and sometimes if we're called, if we're chosen, if we're brave enough to walk toward the light, we get to see what lies beyond, and what lies beyond is more beautiful than any words can express. Assalamu alaikum. May peace, wonder, and divine mystery fill your lives.